Hello guys, today we're going to talk about the UDTs, the user-defined data type. And when we are working in projects, global projects, we usually define tags and variables in order to use it in our main program. UDTs or user-defined data type is simplify this process and make it very compact and very reduced in order to use only one tag and which contain a lot of data and variable. Let's see how this work. Actually, when we go to the PLC tags here, we have already under the show all tags. We'll click here. We have already defined some tags which working with previously, and this is how we usually work. If we have a little work to do, we can define that tags and give it type and address and so on. But when we are working in a very big project or very intensive work, that will be a frustrated task. Whenever we repeat the same task and repeat it again and again, it will be just time consuming. So instead of this, we can go to the PLC data type here and create a data type. And data type can be very helpful in this sense. So in order to create a data type, we just double click a new data type and let's give it a name. We're hitting F2 and let's say for example give it a name, I don't know, let's believe that we are working with a PEMP and give it a name of PEMP and hit OK. So when we create the PEMP data type, the data type itself now it's empty and needs to be filled with other checks and variables included in the data type. And let's see, for example, let's say that we are working with PEMP and some checks. It can be, for example, PEMP state, for example, if it's on or off. PEMP state, it will be of course Boolean, and for example maximum rate flow, I believe that could be an integer, and the minimum rate flow, for example minimum rate flow, and this defined as integer. It could be also some other tags like for example temperature, maximum temperature, um, of course will be also integer, and minimum temperature, let's say I'm just giving some tags randomly. He's not very specific, just an example to illustrate the case, and so on. So you can give it multiple tags in order to work with, and that's it. That's how we create, for instance, this data type for example a work which is related to the PEMP in itself. So in order to make this very interesting and work with in our main program, for example, let's say in our main program here, go to the main program and let's give us some input and output. For example, let's say we can here, and instead of working with normal checks, we can use the PEMP data type. For example, let's say PEMP. Oh, I forget to add actually to the text here. I need to add the data user, the user data type to the principal checks in our PLC. So here, for example, in show all, we can add another check, for example, PEMP1, and give it a type like the PEMP. which we are created in the user data type. And of course, the address can be an input or output. Let's say that we are using an input and 0 and hit OK. So that's it. That's now it's included in our PLC tags, and we can use it in our main. So whenever we go to the main, we can call it from here and give, for example, temp. And as you can see here, guys, it pops up here and telling us that we can use this as a defined tag. And here you can, for example, use the temp state, which is boolean, and hit OK. And here, for example, let's say we are using a move function or something like this, just to matter as a matter of explanation. You can let's say, for example, 15 and move it to the temp. And when we hit enter, it pops up with all the text included in the user data type, which has 4 data type in the type of integer. Let's say, for example, let's send it to the max temperature. Let's have this situation, for example. And here you can just use, for example, another input or output. I don't know. It could be whatever it could be. And as you can see here, it's very simple. And just like this, we can use the data type, user data type in our main program and simplify the workflow. Another case of use of the data type is when we are creating and dealing with function, and that's also help us in reducing the time of creating blocks. For example, let's say here, let's add a function. And first of all, we need to create a data block. And for example, this let's call it pimp, for example, and hit OK. Or let's call it UDT global and hit OK. And now we can, for example, add tags in our database here. For example, let's say N.1 and define the type as pimp. And whenever we select the pimp as data type, it creates all the variable which is included with the data type. This creates another one, for example, pimp2, and the same type as data type, and also it brings all the data with it. Now let's go and create, for example, a function. Let's say function block. Let's call it block pimp, for example, or I'll just given here random names. So just to keep it very clear and simple. And here, as you can see here in the text inside the function, we have an input output you can create. In the usual work we are working with, when we are working with a simple function or 2 or 3, it's simple to go and make one by one. But once we get a lot of work and load of blocks, we can't get it, and it can be very frustrated task. So let's say, for example, here call pimp data and create the tags, and for example choose the type as a pimp. And now we can go to the main program and call the function and call it here and call it from here pump. You can just drag and drop it. Let's go to the data block, and from here let's drag it, for example, the pump1, and drag it, drop it here, and done. So as simple as that, guys. We are defining the function with all the data here. Uh, this variable or this tag, it contains the user defined data type, which contains 4 or 5 variables that we have created before. So uh, normally when we are creating function, we just create multiple of inputs and outputs, and that's it will be as soon as we get a lot of tags, it will be a very frustrated and very complex and time consuming. So let's have another example when we use just a simple text. For example, let's add new block and call it function and call it, for example, block pump, but without UDT, without UDT. This time without UDT, and we'll see the difference. And hit OK, and inside this function we'll go for example one by one and declaring one by one. This can be very frustrated. For example, temp state and max flow rate. So as I told you guys, this is a very frustrated task. It can be very long sometimes when we are dealing with hundreds or dozens of tags. That can be very long task. For example, let's say minimum flow rate that we've created in the data type, just to show you the difference between the using the user data type and without using the user data type. And for example, maximum temperature, hit OK, minimum temperature. So as you can see here, we are creating the tags inside the function, and whenever we go to the main and call this function, which contains all the tags we are created, it will create all the inputs that we need to be filled. And this is the cool part where this UDT were useful. It's instead of filling all this inputs, we need just fill one input, and this is where this user data type is very powerful to use in our main program. So this is how we usually work, but this is a very long task that we are filling one by one every single input. That can be very frustrated, um, especially when we have a multiple block to fill. This could be very time consuming. And instead, as I showed you, this is the right process and the right workflow to use or to implement using the user data type. So I think that's the end of this tutorial. So I hope that you enjoyed and you understand the advantage of the user data type in our blog and our PLC programming. So that's it, guys, and see you in the next tutorial. Bye bye.